Welcome everybody to the November 2nd meeting of the Temple Terrace City Council. It's a pleasure to see everybody here today. If you would, please stand with me for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Lord, we come before you tonight with grateful hearts. We thank you for the many blessings you bestow upon us. Help us always to be mindful that without you we are nothing. We pray in a special way tonight for our nation on the eve of a very important election. We ask you to heal the divisions in our community and in our nation. Help each of us here tonight to be an instrument of your peace, that we might be an example to others and promote unity. We ask this in your holy name. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. Just another reminder to please make sure your electronic devices are silenced. We'll begin tonight with a presentation from the American Red Cross. Dr. Ken Gadara is here. He's a board member of the Tampa Red Cross. Is with us tonight to present a presentation. Welcome, Dr. Gadara. He's promised to hold this to 90 minutes. That's right.
75.
Okay.
Is there a microphone up here?
Yes, sir. It's yeah. That's a light. It's the bar on the top of the podium is the microphone. That's it.
I'm pretty high tech. I'm talking into the light.
Very good. You're not the first.
I burned my mouth many times. Well, it's an honor to be here and present to the Temple Terrace Chamber and the elected officials, you especially, Mayor Andy. We'll go back a little ways. I actually used to live in Temple Terrace at one time. And I wanted to, the Red Cross is trying to get out. You didn't press the button. The Red Cross is trying to get out into the community with the elected officials, the appointed officials of each community, and saying, we're here, we're a partner, we want to work with you. And we have in the past, but we wanted just to stress that we are available and that we really, really want to continue good relationships and work together. And if that's really the gist of it. But I'll bore you with a little bit more. My story is I'm an orthopedic surgeon for children. I worked for Shriners for 30 years. And when I retired, I thought I should do something different. So I ended up with the Red Cross, and I'm on their board, and I'm one of their community outreach persons. But I wanted to let you know tonight that we are continuing to do our mission, and we just do it differently with COVID now. And our mission is shown here, and I don't typically read slides, but it's important to know that Red Cross prevents and alleviates suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and generosity of donors. And I want to stress that many of our people are volunteers, in fact, the majority. And as far as donations go, we return 90 cents on a dollar to the people in need, the clients, and the services we perform. And that's pretty good for a charity. I also work for Shriners, and we strive to meet that 90%. It's a hard job with any overhead. Here's what we do across the country every day. We do thousands of assisting of people and families. We do blood donations up to 40% of the country. We help the military with notification and reentry programs and programs for their families. We give immunizations overseas, mostly measles. And we do a lot of instructions of training such as first aid, CPR, etc. And shown here is how we go about it. We use protective equipment. You'll see that client is actually in a hotel room. You see a number above the guy's hat. We don't do the big shelters this year, if possible. We have those available as needed. And we have been able to continue our care. If you look at the numbers on the bottom, this year locally, we've taken care of 177 home fires and 300 families assisted. And here's where the home fires have been. Centered in Tampa, you see Temple Terrace involved, sir. We have Pinellas also, and we respond and we work with the local fire departments and emergency departments. We do much more virtually nowadays, calling the client and working with them. And it's amazing when you do that sort of work, the devastation these people have. And even a smaller fire, they may not be able to go home for a few days and they don't have their medicine, they don't have their eyeglasses. One guy didn't have his dentures, you know, and it's amazing what you can end up needing. I personally had a home fire in my younger days when I was overseas in the Army, and I learned quickly what you grab with you in a couple minutes. And yes, you do get dressed. Something happened there. Might have hit. Was that the next one? It is now. We do a lot of preparedness work. Shown here, some alarms being inserted. We've put thousands of those in houses across the Bay Area. We've made over 8,000 houses safer. Shown here is us working with the fire department up top, a home plan on the bottom, on the upper right, putting in a detector on the left, and on the right is a school program for children where we get them to take a pillowcase, decorate it, make fun out of it, but then they know to put their stuff in there and grab that thing should there be any type of emergency, whether it's fire or storm or whatever. So those are some of our work we do with the community. The home fire and pillowcase projects are shown here, and again, it's across the bay, back and forth. As far as blood goes, we do not actually collect the blood in Florida. We have a partnership with One Blood, but we do about 40% in the country. We've been involved also with the COVID antibodies and giving back the plasma. With the armed forces, we help the veteran. We help the member overseas and we help their families. That's while they're gone, we have educational programs for the family. We have emergency communications. When I was an Army doctor in Korea, I would get a notification that Private Smith needed to come home right away because of some emergency, and then what me and my people would do, we'd call the company commander, actually battalion and company, and then we could have that guy out towards the airport in several hours and headed home. And that was a good communication system. We have these workshops with stress. You all have heard how it is when people come home, the member's on edge, the family's not used to having he or she around, and we work with them before and after. And we served over 900 families in the Tampa Bay area this year through the military program. Internationally, we're also active. Overseas, we mostly do helping people find family members after a disaster. And, you know, they don't have the network that we have occasionally, you know, generally. And we also do immunizations and mental health. But it's a little different overseas, but that's what we do. Training programs I've alluded to. We're doing more virtually. But we have all sorts of training programs for nurses aides. If anyone needs first aid training, BLS, we can provide that. Again, we're even into psychology and helping people get the educational component they need. So what's going on now? It's like there's crisis everywhere if you look at the maps. Out in the west, we got the fires, and there's just hundreds of fires raging out there. The Red Cross, with all these disasters, including the storms, has sent over 6,000 volunteers out to all these areas over the last few months. And we still have several thousand on the ground. We have almost a permanent force in Louisiana because of their storms. I think they've had 5. That middle area that's kind of yellow or brown, that's the Colorado wildfires. They've taken quite a toll. And we have, at last count, I think 6,000 people still housed in either a shelter or a hotel or some temporary. And then we've also had a group that fled Louisiana, went to Texas, and some of them can't afford to come home. They don't have the fuel money, so we're helping them. And of course, the Portland fires and all the way to California, it's just gone crazy. And my own son got evacuated from their house in a Portland suburb. The fire was 1.5 miles away, and they spent 3 or 4 days in a hotel. And they said the smoke was incredible. And again, here's all those storms and fires, the things we're working on, and you know, the small print tells exactly what we've done, but we've been very active across the nation. And that's how one neighborhood in Oregon looked after all the fire burns, straight through and just left the remnants of the houses. I actually didn't want to show the videos. So I'll end by saying, we're here, we're in a community, it's just volunteers like myself. We are available, always willing to work with you, and I think the cities and us, you know, with your disaster teams, we just need to continue to work together. You never know when something's going to hit. This has been the most crazy hurricane season we've seen. It's not over yet. We have till the end of the month, and with the fires, et cetera. So we're here. We want to work. If you look there, there's something called a ready rating. You can have a business checkout, or your city offices, you know, how prepared are you? And it's a great thing for you to encourage city members, citizens to volunteer. And of course, donations are always accepted. That's how we get by. But just wanted to know, for you to know, that we're here and we want to continue to partner with you. And that includes you, Chief. Okay, well, thank you, all of you, and
Thank you, Dr. Gadara.
appreciate you putting up with me.
Council members, any questions for Dr. Gadara?
I hope I never need you.
Well,
Yeah.
if you do, you know who to call.
That's right.
12
Ken?
minutes.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We
You
appreciate
can
it.
come back
It's
again.
Thank you, all of you.
it's always a
Thank you.
pleasure to see you.
I left a few cards.
We're good.
Good.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is the approval of the October 20th City Council meeting minutes. A motion and a second. Any discussion or corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
See no opposed, the minutes are approved. Next item is persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. 3-minute time limit will be imposed on all comments from the public. We ask that speakers come to the podium, state their name and city of residence. During any public comment, we like to assure everybody that the city manager and the directors do take your comments seriously, and we follow up on issues that are brought forward. The only requests I have to speak are for agenda items. Is there anybody in the gallery who would like to address the council on any other issue? Okay, seeing none. Next item on the agenda is a Municipal Code Enforcement Board lien reduction petition for the property located at 602 Courtney Drive. Code Enforcement Board Chairman David Pogorlich will present. Welcome, Mr. Pogorlich.
Thank you. David Pogorlich, Chair of the Temple Terrace Code Board. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Tonight I have one lien recommendation on case number 17-2440, City versus James B. Burns, for the property located at 602 Courtney Drive. The recommendation is to reduce the fine from $65,200 to $1,000 contingent upon receipt of payment within 30 days of tonight's council meeting date, or the fine shall be reverted back to the original amount of $65,200. At our October 14, 2020 Municipal Code Enforcement meeting, this lien reduction recommendation came up and was voted on and unanimously passed. A little bit of history. This particular case originated in 2017, October 2017, for violation of Section 10-34, overgrown underbrush, hedges, weeds, accumulation of trash on the porch and in the carport. The respondent actually acquired the property in February of 2020 and had it all cleaned up by March of 2020, which is the reason why we were recommending the lien reduction. So again, it's a reduction recommended from $65,200 to $1,000, contingent upon payment within 30 days. I do not believe the respondent is in the audience. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Mr. Pegorlich. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, also let the record reflect that the owner or representative is not here. Council members, do you have any questions for Mr. Pegorlich?
I would add that the $1,000 recommendation was agreed to by the respondent at the code board meeting.
Okay, very good, thank you. If there are no questions, time for a motion. If I'd entertain any motions that you might want to.
Move to approve the recommendation of the code board, reducing the lien down to $1,000 if paid within 30 days.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. I see no opposed.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Few items on the consent agenda. City manager will explain the items listed on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've got 4 items on consent this evening. Item 7A is a resolution to purchase a 2021 Ford 250 pickup truck, $45,095 from Duval Ford Fleet through Florida Sheriff's Association bid FSA 20-VEH 18.0. Fiscal year in 2020, 2021, budget includes the funds for this scheduled replacement of a 2007 Chevy Silverado pickup truck. The budgeted funds for the total expenditure of $45,095 have been allocated in account 001-1896-572.64-12. That vehicle is for the Parks and Rec Department. Item 7B is a resolution to purchase a 2021 Microbird G514 passenger bus for $67,583 from Florida Transportation Systems through Sourcewell Contract 102115-BBB. Fiscal year 2021 budget includes funds for the scheduled replacement of a 2010 Chevy Express 3500 passenger van. Budgeted funds for the total expenditure of $67,583 have been allocated in account 001-1881-572.64-11. Item 7C, included in this year's budget of fiscal year 2021 is funding for the purchase of new playground equipment for Ridgedale Park. Currently, the Ridgedale Park has an assortment of playground equipment that was installed approximately 1995. The city operates and maintains this Ridgedale Sports Complex through a cooperative use agreements with Hillsborough County School Board and the Diocese of St. Petersburg. The location of the playground is on property owned by the diocese, and we have an agreement with them to put this new equipment on. The purchase of this playground will piggyback on St. Johns County School District bid 2018-04. Item 7C is a resolution approving the purchase of the playground equipment from Top Line Recreation in the amount of $65,000. Payment to be made and provided with funds from account 001-1896-572.64-99. Last and final, item 7D is a resolution approving the purchase of new desktop computers in the amount of $36,999.63 to replace 2016 equipment. The new equipment purchase includes 37 Dell Opti 3080 desktop computers. All this hardware is being purchased from Dell contractor VTech, piggybacking on the state of Florida DMS participating addendum contract 432-115-0-WSCA-15-ACS. Total purchase is the amount of $36,999.63, is fully funded and budgeted in fiscal year 2021 budget. That concludes the agenda, the consent agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. Consent agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing and second reading to adopt ordinance 1500, amending Chapter 2 of the Code Firefighter Pension and Retirement, adding required IRS changes. I'll open the public hearing, and Fire Chief Ian Kemp will provide an explanation. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Ian Kemp, your fire chief. I'm in attendance for this public hearing and second reading of the ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the Code Firefighter Pension Retirement, adding required IRS changes. The City of Temple Terrace has created a retirement system for its firefighters employed by the City of Temple Terrace to provide pension, death, and disability benefits. It is intended that the system will constitute a tax-qualified public pension plan under the Internal Revenue Code and its regulations. The Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement, SECURE Act was passed by Congress and signed into law by the President in December of 2019 and became effective January 1st, 2020. This act increases the age at which minimum distributions are required from 70.5 years to age 72. The Fire Pension Board recommends the City Council approve the proposed ordinance changes to the plan to maintain its tax-qualified status. There is no cost to the city nor the pension plan for this change.
We're good. Thank you, Chief. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, council members, any questions for Chief Kemp? We will close the public hearing if there are no questions and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance, please.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Administration and Elections, Article 3, Officers and Employees, Division 3, Pensions and Retirement, Subdivision 4, Firefighters of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Temple Terrace, amending Section 2-203, Benefit Amounts and Eligibility, amending Section 2-209, Optional Form of Benefit Income, amending Section 2-222, Miscellaneous Provisions, providing for severability of provisions, providing for codification, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Good, thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 1500?
I move to approve the second reading to adopt ordinance 1500, amending Chapter 2 of the Code Firefighter Pension and Retirement, adding required IRS changes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. I see no nays. The ordinance is adopted on second reading. Next item is a public hearing and second reading to adopt ordinance 1501, amending Chapter 2, Administration and Elections of the City Code of Ordinances. I'll open the public hearing. City Attorney Pam Sashone will provide a brief explanation.
As everyone knows, there have been a number of emergency orders during this past year from our governor, also from our county, and it has been, we realized that our city itself did not have anything within our ordinances laying out the procedure by which the city itself could declare a state of emergency. There are emergencies that may only affect one city, in which case the city would have the opportunity to declare its own local state of emergency. During this past year, even though the pandemic affected the entire state as well as the country and the world, many of the cities and counties did declare their own states of emergency. The City of Temple Terrace did not do that. Fortunately, our county did that, and we were able to travel along under the county's state of emergency order. Our city charter recognizes that a certain number of city council members would declare a state of emergency if that were necessary. What our charter does not do is distinguish between the types of emergencies. Florida law does do that. Florida law recognizes certain procedures for declaring a state of emergency if there was civil unrest. That would be different than all other emergencies, whether it's a hurricane or a pandemic. Florida law allows a municipality to choose who the designated official is to declare a state of emergency in the event of civil unrest. If you do not choose somebody, it defaults to the police chief, which of course is fine, but you do have the opportunity to designate whether it be the police chief or the mayor. With this particular ordinance that we are proposing, you are able to make that designation. We have proposed that it be the police chief, but that is of course up to you. It also sets forth how many city council members are necessary to declare a state of emergency. Florida law says it's 2/3 of the governing body. 2/3 of a governing body of 5 is actually 3 and a portion of another person, so we would have to have 4 people. It also sets forth procedures, and it is not all-inclusive. There are lengthy Florida statutes that control what we can do and what we cannot do. They also talk about having to provide notice to the public and how that should be done and when that should be done. But what this does is it combines many of these statutes along with our charter into one ordinance, so that in the event of an emergency, when their time is usually of the essence, we will be able, our citizens and our staff and our council will be able to go to one ordinance and find out what they need to do immediately. If they want more information, at least it sets forth which statutes do apply, and then we can go to the statute itself and read the entire chapter to find what else we need. But I believe that this provides everybody with a very quick reference in this state, and in case of any type of emergency. So we are recommending approval of this ordinance.
Good, thank you, Mr. Schoen. Are there members of the public who wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, council members, do you have any questions of our attorney?
No? Thank you.
If there are no questions, I'll close the public hearing and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances by enacting a new Article 6, Civil Emergency Management, consisting of newly created Sections 2-401 through 2-409, providing for the management consisting of newly created, providing for the repeal of ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Good, thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 1501 on second reading?
Move to adopt ordinance 1501, amending Chapter 2, Administration Elections, City Code of Ordinances. Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? No nays. The ordinance is adopted on second reading. Thank you. Next item is a resolution approving CARES Act funding project list and authorizing the city manager to approve emergency purchases. City Manager Charles Stevenson will explain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our October 20th meeting, City Council approved the CARES Act funding agreement and the first modification of the CARES Act funding agreement between the county and the city of Temple Terrace. Under the CARES Act agreement, the city will receive $228,817 for expenses used to mitigate COVID-19 pandemic since March 1 of 2020. The first modification to the CARES Act funding agreement provided the city with an additional, or not an additional, but a total of $2.9 million to assist the city in its efforts to continue mitigating the pandemic with purchases made from present time until December 30th, 2020. Under normal circumstances, the city adheres to the following guidelines for purchasing. And if I can outline that real quick here for everybody. Purchases less than $1,000, quotes are not mandatory. Purchases greater than $1,000 but less than or equal to $10,000 Written or verbal quotes should be obtained from at least 3 vendors. Purchases greater than $10,000 but less or equal to $25,000, written quotes must be obtained from no less than 3 vendors. Purchases greater than or equal to $25,000, formal bid process is required unless using a state contract or a piggyback of an existing contract. In order to make purchases prior to December 30th, 2020 deadline, it's necessary to ask council to suspend the city's purchasing guidelines, which is allowable under Chapter 18 of the city's purchasing manual entitled Emergency Purchases. Chapter 18 allows emergency purchases to be made when threats to public health, welfare, or safety that may arise from hurricane, floods, equipment failure, or other disruptions of essential services that might occur within the city. Staff has compiled a list of emergency purchase items which it believes meets the eligibility requirements of the CARES Act and therefore reimbursable expenses. 2 separate schedules have been provided to council. The first is a purchases made in 2020 prior to the distribution of monies that were necessary for continuing our services and health protection for employees that were not accounted for in the 2020 budget. And the second schedule is purchases that we anticipate due to the assignment of the additional CARES Act monies from Hillsborough County. If council determines that the emergency purchasing procedures are applicable to the items acquired with the CARES Act funding, the city manager will oversee and approve all COVID-19 purchases and provide a written report to council at subsequent city council meeting. It is recommended by staff that city council adopt a resolution approving the CARES Act funding project list that's been provided to council and suspend purchasing guidelines authorizing the city manager to approve COVID-related emergency purchases with CARES Act monies from now until December 30th of 2020. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Are there any members of the public who'd like to comment on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Move to approve the resolution.
No, council members, did you have a question, Vice Mayor Donahue?
I did.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's
Vice Mayor.
okay. I just want to make sure that this suspension only applies to the monies for CARES, right? That's the only thing we're just buying these items. We're suspending the practice just for these items, not for,
Yes, ma'am.
not
That
for
is correct.
purchases across the board.
No, these are COVID-related that we're going to submit to the county for reimbursement
Yeah.
under the money that they've allotted us.
Okay. I just want to make sure, I wanted the public to hear that answer. Thank you.
Sorry, I kind of jumped past the
It's
question.
okay.
Are there any other questions of Mr. Stevenson? Council members? If not, Mr. Chambers?
Yeah, motion to approve the CARES Act funding and to approve the suspension of purchasing requirement.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? I do have one comment, just kind of dovetails off of what Vice Mayor Donahue said. Mr. Stevenson, I read the resolution doesn't really say this, and I didn't see any need to change the wording of the resolution, but we know this is fluid, that you may not be able to get some of the things that are on this list, and therefore you may have to deviate and say, well, let's use the money for this kind of, there are other things that may come up. Should that occur, if they are over the $25,000 cap that we normally have, I would ask that you would let the council know, and then we would have an opportunity, if it were something that we thought deserved a little discussion, if we needed to, we could call an emergency council meeting. We don't want to hold it up, but I don't really see that as being very likely, but it's more transparent if we know. I know you have one project in there that's $300,000, and if that were to fall through, you probably would come up with a plan B.
The schedules that we have given to council are subject to change even as of this morning.
Exactly.
We had some suggestions out of staff that why don't we do this? And
Exactly.
It's certainly a COVID-related expense.
Exactly.
But I do understand what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. We'd be more than happy.
Yeah, I don't want to
I mean,
hold it
this
up and
is-
wait for 2 weeks for you to tell us at a regular meeting. You can
I-
shoot an email, and if somebody's got a heartburn week, they can we can always call an unscheduled meeting. So,
We'd be more than happy to do that.
very good. Okay, thank you. Are there other comments on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? No nays. The resolution is passed. Next item on the agenda is a resolution approving a 3-year employment agreement with the city manager. So I will deviate a little bit from the notes like I did last time to go in an order that I think is fair and transparent to everybody. I'll introduce the item and kind of outline for the public the changes or the terms of the contract, well, the changes in the contract. I'm not going to go through every page or every section. Then I'll invite any comments that Mr. Stevenson would like to make, and then we'll ask for public comment, and then I will open it up for council discussion prior to a motion, which is the unusual part. Okay? Is that okay with everybody? Okay. So the council directed me and Mr. Stevenson to discuss the contract, which we did over the past few weeks. We've met several times, and I will outline what is before the council for consideration tonight. It is a 3-year contract that would commence the day after his current contract expires on February 26th. This contract would begin on February the 27th and run for 36 months. Under Section 3, the term, Item 4, the previous contract said at the death of the city manager, in such event of the city manager's death, his heirs should be entitled to receive any accrued sick time, vacation, so forth. We removed the sick time because that's not a normal city benefit. All the other entitlements remained. The next change is residency. The city manager's current contract allows him to reside outside of the city because he owned his own home prior to becoming city manager, and this council has previously agreed to allow him to remain in his own home since he owns a home. We did add language, I added language in there that he can continue to do that. However, if he decides to relocate his residence, he must move into the city. Next section, the vehicle allowance did increase from $500 a month to $600 a month, of course, upon council's approval. The vacation leave, we came to an agreement pending council's approval that his max cap of 450 hours, which applies to all city employees, would be raised to 650 hours, but that it would be capped at 650 hours. The next section is sick leave. The agreement was reached per our agreement pending council approval. There will be no change in the sick leave policy, and the city manager's contract reflects the same rules concerning sick leave as apply to every other employee. The disability insurance in section 14, we made some minor changes, but the only minor changes, they upped the amount of coverage a little bit because his salary is higher than it was during the old contract. And we changed the age of the age that the policy would go to, because all of us are older than we were 4 years ago. The retirement plan, there had been some discussion. That language in there is remaining the same as in his current contract. The city will continue to contribute 15% of his base salary to retirement. There's no increase in that. And the professional development, we had discussion about his various certifications and what's coming due and when it's coming due and where he has to go to get these things. So we did agree to increase the budget for that from $4,000 to $5,000. But based on his certifications and licenses, I was comfortable with that amount. And I think that was it. Those are the changes that are proposed that are before the council tonight for consideration. So Mr. Stevenson, did you want to, you don't have to, but would you like to say anything at this point?
No, just thanks for meeting with me. I mean, we had a couple series of meetings that I thought were rather fruitful, and I don't want to play poker with Mr. Ross. He's a tough negotiator. But I'm looking forward to another 3 years if council approves this extension. But I do appreciate the opportunity to even discuss it. So thank you, sir.
Good, thank you. I do have a few requests to address this item from the public. I will take them in the order that they were received. Mr. Ritter, you are up first. Good evening, sir. You've done this.
Jack Ritter, Temple Terrace, soon to be 75 years here. It doesn't give me a great deal of pleasure to do what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. Each of you sitting on this council have been hollered at by this gentleman sitting here who's seeking a contract. And this is by your own admission from the dais. This is an intolerable issue with me. It's a personality flaw, and it shouldn't be accepted by any of you. Suspect that our manager has hollered at employees of the city. I've even been told by employees that this goes on. This may be indicative of a hostile work environment. I'm concerned. I hope you are too. Recently, an individual who lives on Richland Road came in here and talked about code enforcement and having a commercial truck in his driveway. He called it his pod on wheels. This individual cursed at the code officer, also the code director, and then he called the manager, apparently seeking redress. The manager told the person to put a tarp over this truck and squash the code violation. The manager has, in fact, created a new standard for this one individual, contrary to the existing code approved by the council. Also, there's been a number of instances where he has been less than transparent. One example has been with Habitat, and in another session I can reiterate, I've got a stack of paper like this on the issue. I recommend that we table this contract, consider reducing it to 2 years with a 1-year option, all right? And at the time we decide whether we're going to take the option or not, then we put in a search for a new manager. Remember, his first proffer was a contract with a golden parachute. The gentleman asked for a golden parachute from this city after less than 4 years as our manager. Shame, shame. Also, let's buy a car for this man to drive. Let's let him use the car for personal use and have a charge back on a monthly basis for personal use. Many executives and many big firms have exactly that. So with that, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter. Next is Ms. Tumbleson. Welcome, Ms. Tumbleson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Jan Tumbleson, Temple Terrace. Okay, Charles Stevens has been the city manager since 2016. The contract has been revised by Mayor Ross and the city manager, and I suggest it be approved. Charles has kept all employees through this time employed, safe, and tested. We know his qualifications and knowledge of the city, the financial situation, what the city requires as far as services and expects. Councils throughout the city, he has contacts with the council, with the city, county, and state. He has developed and annexed things as the Amazon. Again, I support the renewal of Charles Stevenson's contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tumbleson. Next and last member of the public is Rachel Pulowski. Welcome, ma'am.
Rachel Pulowski, East 113th Avenue. I think that we can all agree that right now the climate is a little tense, to say the very least. And it's during these times that we look to our leaders like you to guide us through them and assure us that everything's going to be okay. My understanding, and you guys reassured that tonight, is that Mr. Stevenson's contract isn't actually up until February. So I'm kind of confused as to why we're pushing this through tonight when we are literally going through the voting process right now. We have our residents that have been voting on our new council member, and I'm kind of confused as to why we're rushing through and trying to get this through tonight instead of waiting until the new council member is up and everybody can go through with whoever's going to be working with him and go through and renegotiate with that person, since they're going to be with you guys working together with him. I'm requesting that you guys hold off on the vote until whoever that new council member is, so that the city can take a look at everything and work together with that person and with Mr. Stevenson and come up with something that works together. There's obviously some changes that have been made, some pretty significant changes that have been made in his request. And I think that that's just the right thing to do. And I'm confident that you guys will work together and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pulaski. Are there other members of the public who wish to address this item? Okay. Very good. Council? Vice Mayor Donahue.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First of all, I'm glad you were the negotiator. It wasn't me. I'm sure you put a lot of thought into it. Sounds like you did. I have a couple of questions about the unfunded liability of 650 hours. You know, that's at the pay rate that we have now, that's another $17,201.75. And as it is now, Mr. Stevenson has 416 vacation days, hours, and 365 sick hours, which is $63,308.50. That's a chunk of change, and I'm concerned about that. And I mean, I don't know, I guess the finance director is here. I'm hoping we put that type of money into a fund someplace, reserve account or whatever, but I mean, that's a lot of money, especially another $17,000. And as we can see, apparently Mr. Stevenson never takes a vacation because he already has 416 hours out of the 450 that he was allowed before. My other question is about the insurance. Is there a reason to have two policies? One's for 10,000, if I read it right, one is for 10,000, and which is what all the employees get, and the other one is for replace his salary, 1 year salary. I think that's normal for an administrator. I just want to know, why would we have two policies? That's in section 15. And maybe I read it wrong, but let me look it up again. It says, yeah, with the same 10,000 basic life insurance policy. So it appears to be two policies, unless that's just a typo. So that's a concern. And also, you know, on sections 17, 18, and 20, we mentioned memberships and participation, conferences, committees, I mean, all the different things that we would be spending. Now, last year, we haven't seen ever a way that the 4,000 was spent, and now we're going to make it 5,000. So that's just a concern for me. And those numbers are big to me. The $500 car allowance that's now $600 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's $1,200. And as somebody who's spending taxpayer money, you know, that's still a dollar, still a number. And, you know, when we were talking about the employees' pay raises, the first thing we all said was, you know, we don't know what's happening with COVID, with the restrictions, the monetary things that have happened over the year, what's going to happen? So now, here we are placing this burden on the next council to budget and to fund this, and not just for 1 year, but for 3 years. And then I'm sure along the way, there will be pay raises, I'm hoping, if things start to look better. But even if not, we're talking about a sizable dollar amount here. So because of all of these things, I just want to, I don't know if you know this or not, but in the city of Temple Terrace, of our registered voters, 66% have already voted. That's high. That's a lot of people who've already cast their ballot. So we have 2 gentlemen here tonight who are candidates. We have another candidate who's not able to be with us tonight. One of those people is going to sit up here, and they're going to have to come up with the money to pay for this. I'm concerned that we're doing this prematurely. So I agree with the comment, the 2 speakers, that we need to hit the pause button on this and rethink this. And if we don't do that, we at least need to go back to these numbers and find out why are these so high? Why? Oh, this is what these add up to. So I have 2 concerns. One is the amount of money we're going to be spending. And then the last, obviously, is it's premature. We haven't had this conversation as to what these are and why. I mean, I realize this is how we have to do it, and I understand all that. You know, I think the magic number has been 90 days or something like that. Well, from November 17th, it would be 99 days. And from December 1st, it'd be 85 days. I mean, we're not that far out from looking at this again. So that's my cost. I also have one note. I did notice one thing. The contract uses the terms ICCMA and ICMA, and we just need to make sure it's the same and that it's consistent. That's just a simple typo. I'm sure that could be corrected even if everything else gets approved. So those are my comments. I mean, I would be more than happy to make a motion, but I'd like to hear what council thinks about the contract in general.
Just, if I could maybe provide a little clarity, a couple of the points, if
Yeah,
I can
please.
remember everything. The vacation leave going from 450 hours capped to 650 is absolutely, that's 200 hours more. That part
Yeah.
is absolutely, there's a cash value to that, yes. The sick time, however, I want to remind everybody that the sick time is not paid out upon separation for any employees, and it wouldn't be per this contract either. So you're correct that the additional 200 hours of vacation is a potential
Yeah.
significant increase, but the sick time is not, because the sick time, if he were to leave tomorrow under any circumstances, he wouldn't get the paid out for the sick time.
Right, but you can roll your sick time over to vacation time.
A portion,
Yeah.
yes. The life insurance question, you are correct, but this life insurance, section 15 concerning life insurance, has not changed since Mr. Sieber was the city manager. So I sat with Mr. Stevenson in 2016 also, 16. And we've never discussed section 15 because it was carryover from, I understand your point, but it didn't, we didn't really even talk about that. So,
But are we buying 2 policies?
yeah, well, the city's life insurance, that comes with the 10,000 for all employees, and we are, yes, for our executive, we are buying an additional life insurance policy. Let me finish clarifying. The professional development increase from 4,000 to 5,000, I will agree that we as a council have never seen anything about how that money was spent, but I did ask and obtain that during our discussions. And so I have looked at each certification and what it costs and those types of things. So I'm not arguing yay or nay, I'm just saying that I saw it, and perhaps we should ask for that for everybody to see if we want to do that. Was there something else that, I'll reserve comment on the other thing. There's just clarification. And Mr. Chambers, I think, was ahead of
And I
you.
wish somebody maybe from HR was here, but when with the disability insurance, when I worked as a regular employee, I had both policies. That's an option every employee got. I don't know if they still do 4 years after I retired, but they got short-term, that was an option you could take, and long-term also. And as a director, I had that in my contract also. So it's something, it used to be for every employee, but I don't. Okay, so it's still there.
And I did, thank you for reminding me of something else. I did check with HR about the premium to up the age and up because the salary's higher, and the increase in that is negligible. It's not much at all. I mean, I don't have the exact figure, but we don't pay a lot for that long-term disability policy, and it's not much change in premium. Mr. Sisker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Lien. Lien, do we accrue for vacation as it's earned into the balance sheet? Okay, therefore, it's not an unfunded liability. Okay.
Well,
we
wait a
have
minute,
that.
it is.
Well,
Yes, it is.
If it's on our books, it's on our books.
It's in the audit, and it was in the past audit as an accrued liability.
It's an accrued liability. This is not something just going to puff out of nowhere.
Okay, would you
So-
come up here, because this is not what you told me. Because we had this conversation about, do we keep enough money, do we have money to pay unused vacation time and you told me, no, we don't, because we don't count on everybody leaving at the same time.
That is absolutely correct. It is not in the budget that way at all. When we record it in an audit, it is considered an accrued liability in auditing. It's a numbers. For example, I'll give you another example if it would help. Our streets are also a liability, and they're also subject to depreciation, but I don't have any money or cash or anything to actually represent that. It's just in the audit that way as well. There's no budget for it. And that's the same with this as well. It's well-meaning of GASB 34 from when when I had to implement that back in the 2000s, to actually have to monetize some of these things, like monetizing all of our infrastructure for the first time. That came with GASB 34, and it's just in the books as here's our liability or asset. And it's the same way with the accrued, anything that anybody is accruing at the end of 9/30, I have to record that as an accrued liability, and there's not really a cash tied to that as well. There isn't. That is true.
Okay, I think that's what we want to know. We don't care about auditing procedure. What we want to know is if he left in a month, is the money in the budget to pay his unpaid vacation? And the answer is no.
No.
Okay,
But that exists for all of our.
Correct,
commercial
correct.
obligations. Okay, and this is not something new or something that is a potential for occurring in the next year or 2 years. And in 3 years, it could be, and it all depends on whether he utilizes it or not. So I think that the issue then boils down to the actual cash requirements by the way that the contract is worded is about $2,200 annually, when you figure the $1,000 additional in the I'm trying to think of the word,
the professional development.
the professional development, thank you. And then the additional $1,200 a month, or $1,200 a year in the car allowance. The other happens on a natural progression, okay, over the next 3 years, potentially, if it were to occur. So you would actually look at $5,000 a year incremental. So I mean, it's not a guaranteed budget hit that's going to hit right away, except for the car allowance and the professional development. I think we've already discussed at length a couple, 3 weeks ago, the reasoning and the logic behind doing it now, and I think we should stick with that and continue forward with this approval. You, Mr. Mayor, have met with him, and I believe the two of you have negotiated in earnest, and I think that it's time to move forward with what we have to take care of and set the city manager up for a contract for the next 3 years, commencing at the end of February. And I don't particularly see a need to carry it on any further than we've already discussed in the past. And I'll make a motion to that effect if necessary, if
well,
requested.
I'll come back to you. Vice Mayor Donahue?
So none of these benefits begin until February?
Correct. This contract would not become effective until February the 27th. Controller, anything?
Yeah, I'll say a few words. I've done this a long time, and certainly, I won't be here for the next 4 years, but I've represented this community for a very long time with value, and I'm looking at, for the most part, the contract that Ms. Donahue alluded to. A lot of those conditions are as they were before, as Mayor Ross indicated with the insurance. The car allowance, if you all remember, Mr. Stevenson did have a city vehicle, but then there was many naysayers in our community that were accusing him of using that city vehicle, so he said, I'll just take my allowance. So that's where the allowance came from. He did have a city vehicle, but people would come up and accuse him that you're using this vehicle to go home with or whatever else he was doing. So that's where that came from. He did have a city vehicle. Now, I will, with all due respect, I do have a little uncomfort with the vacation leave, and here's where my uncomfort is. I've always been one to be consistent. If we're going to give it to one, you got to give it to all. And, the other employees aren't getting that. That's the only, heartburn I have. So, I'd like to see maybe some consideration to that, to make it more of a level playing field. Because what will happen is when you have your union contracts come forward, they're going to look at that as well. We lead by example. And these will be issues that, this was a good year. We made lots of money, and a lot of us alluded to it. Cash is good, but maybe next year, the following year, it may not be as good. So we have to plan for that. The city manager has done some good things. There's times that I disagree with things he does, and there's times that I agree. And I've seen different city managers, and Mr. Stevenson has done a good job. Okay, I don't have a problem supporting his employment or extending his contract. I would just, feel a little bit more comfortable if there was consideration with the vacation leave, because it's not, it's a far stretch from some of the other folks, in the city. Because I heard rumbling when the original contract came out from folks saying, that's crazy. What about us? So not to have a backlash from other, employees or whatever the case may be, I just want to, for at least the council coming in and you all continuing forward to be able to say, hey, we hash this thing out and we try to do what's fair across the board. And Mr. Stevenson has been, fair. When he first took the job the first year, he did not accept his annual increase that he was entitled to when he became the city manager. So there's been some give and take, but I'm okay with the contract the way it is. My only area of hesitation is a vacation leave. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Well, let me make a couple of brief comments, if I could, because I haven't really clarifying, I haven't commented myself. First of all, I wasn't in favor of doing this until closer to the I completely agree with Mrs. Pulowski. This contract doesn't expire until the end of February, and we rushed this through. To me, we did it just to make sure that one of these three candidates doesn't get a chance to vote on this, which I think is, I don't want to use that adjective, but I don't think it's right. I mean, this contract comes up during, no offense, Mr. Triller, I don't mean it this way, but it doesn't come up, it comes up during the next term. It doesn't come up now. And so I was opposed to doing this tonight. I was opposed to doing this prior to December 1st when the new council member is seated. But I was voted down on that, if you remember. The majority of the council says, no, we want to do it tonight. So, you know, I try to be a team player with the council, and I don't just throw a fit when I don't get my way. I respect the council form of government, and when three of you tell me this is the wishes of the council, I listen to that. I was opposed to us meeting in person back when we started meeting in person, but three of you, the majority of the council says, no, we want to meet in person, so I did. So I'm opposed to doing, I've always been opposed to doing this now, but I also respect the wishes of the majority of the council. I don't know what's going on out there, but that doesn't sound good. So that's my take on that. The other thing is the vacation increase. Folks, this was a product of negotiation. This wasn't me saying this is what I'm offering, you take it or leave it, because I don't have the support of the majority of this council to do that. If I'd have had the support of the majority of this council, I would have negotiated different terms than this. But I don't have that. And so I did the best I could out of fear of coming to impasse. And if I came to impasse, then there would be a vote on his original request, which I didn't want to pass. So I hear what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying about the you know, this is 450 hours for a CEO rate of pay is a lot of money, right? 650 hours, at 200 additional hours at a CEO rate of pay is a lot of money. And we don't have that money on hand. I know that we carry it as a lab, whatever it is, but when it comes to the end of the day, we don't have that money in the mayonnaise jar, okay? So, and we did have some discussion about why there's the inability to take vacation. And I mean, Mr. Stevenson is here, he can speak to that himself. But one of the things that was brought up is, well, we do meet every 2 weeks, which makes it difficult because, you know, we come in here, you know, I spent a day reading the agenda, but that's about it. It takes him days to put together the agenda, the backup material, all that kind of stuff. So it's difficult for him to get, and I suggested to him, well, you know, you don't have to attend every council meeting. You have good directors, chiefs that can, you know, certainly step in and act as city manager. But there was concern that we would, or our expectations would be that he's here, and if he's not, that we would kind of hold it against him. So I hear what you're saying. I'm trying to balance what I truly believe, but I have to be respectful of the majority of the council too. So here I am.
Mr. Mayor, just for what it's worth, I think you did a great job, you know, negotiating from where the contract was originally submitted. I think you did a, you know, a very good job with the terms that, you know, you've worked it the best you could. Certainly that is a key point. It's having to do it, you know, with the sunshine law. It's difficult, obviously, going back and forth. So I think overall the document is pretty consistent with the past document, with the exception of the vacation leave, I think. So that's you know, where the issue that I raised. So it's not like we were, you know, giving this huge bonus package, shall we say, or something. So that's why you know, I'm not uncomfortable with it. You know, Nobody knows the city manager like we know him because we work with him. We used to always have issues where we do an evaluation like in January or February, and I'm like, that's silly because new people coming on, they don't know what, they were here for 2 months. They can't evaluate somebody. So we changed those. So those evaluations now are towards the middle to latter part of the year, which is much more productive. So, you know, I think that you did a very fine job trying to fine tune the contract to make it as consistent. I mean, one huge thing that I believe you negotiated with the city manager was, you know, if there was termination for cause, there was going to be, you know, basically he could get all his benefits as well. And I think you had worked that out where that's not on the table anymore, because that was in there before as well, or not, you know, for cause. And that was very important. But everything else is very similar to the past as far as the way I see it. The car allowance went up $100, and over a 3-year period, I don't think that's unreasonable. Everything goes up, and he did have a car, as I stated earlier. He changed it because a few people came up and spoke and would bash him, saying, "I'll just bring my own car and take the allowance," as the previous city managers had done. So the only issue that I was drawing attention to that I was a little uneasy with is the vacation leave, and based on what the others are receiving, because obviously everybody's salary is in proportion to their responsibility. You know, if somebody is a director, this is X amount of dollars, city manager's X amount of dollars, so they're being paid accordingly for their responsibilities, but the vacation part is what, you know, just didn't sit too well, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Donahue.
Is this contract negotiable still?
That's entirely up to this council. It's before you. I don't know that anything's off the table. It's not up for me to say what's on the table and what's off the table. I negotiated at the direction of this council and brought it back to you on the date that was established by this council. I don't know that anything is on or off the table. I would think it's probably a little awkward and maybe a little inappropriate for us to negotiate here if you want to put this off and do something different. That, you know, that's certainly the purview of the council. I don't know that it's appropriate to enter into negotiations right here in a meeting. I don't think that would be the smartest thing to do, but.
Well, the reason I asked that is that you said you didn't think you had our support. It sounds like you have at least 2 others who think that the 650 hour is way above necessary. As you said, Mr. Chiller, and well put, your salary is what makes the difference. It's not how many days you can accrue or hours you can accrue. But that hour is a very expensive, and let's face it, in 3 years' time, we will have to come up with this money, because I'm not assuming that Mr. Stevenson is leaving, but, you know, there's a good chance you are going to retire at some point, I'm sure, and that we'll have to find that money, and right now, it's not looking like that money is going to be materializing as quickly as it perhaps did in the past. So that's why I ask, is there a way to do this? If you're ready to ask if we want to postpone this, I think that probably is the best way, because we don't even know if Mr. Stevenson would accept if we made a change up here tonight.
Well, when I said I didn't feel like I had the council's support, what I was referring to was this, is I voiced my objections right away to doing this before December the 1st. The council voted to bring this back. First, there was a motion to bring it back later this month, and then a motion was revised to bring it back by today. So the majority of the council voted in favor of that. What I am not going to do on this issue or other issues is just whine if I'm on the losing side of a vote. And when the majority of the council votes on something, I move on. I respect the council form of government. I don't try to take over or dictate, because I'm the mayor. And so that's what I was referring to, was the majority of the council voted to direct me to negotiate with him and bring it back tonight. And that's what I did to the best of my
Well, I
ability.
might add that if you vote against it and you lose, you can't bring it back up. And many
Well-
times, I have to vote yes, knowing that it's all I can do to vote yes, but that I can tell by the votes the way it's going to go. So rather than be on the losing end of the argument, I keep my options open. I vote yes, and therefore I can bring it back up. So it sounds to me like we're bringing it back up. And I'm prepared to make a motion that we hit the pause button and move this item to another date, whether it be 99 days before the expiration of his contract, which is November 17th, or 85 days, which is December 1st, or January 1st, whatever, but closer to the contract. And
I would encourage, if you're going to make a motion, I would encourage you to be a little more specific and
Okay.
concrete. If you,
Well, then
'Cause-
I would like to, I have some questions, though. Is December 1st, what is the day that we're actually swearing in the new
December 1st,
December 1st?
yeah.
So then I would move that to the next meeting, after the second meeting in December.
Okay, can you, if you want to make a motion, could you start over with that?
Yes.
So that everybody understands what's on the table.
I move to move this item to December, I don't have my calendar. What would that be? 15th? To allow time for consideration of the items brought before us tonight.
We have a motion to postpone this item until December 15th meeting. Is there a second?
All right, I'll second for discussion.
We have a motion to postpone till December 15th and a second. Mr. Chambers.
Okay, before, I didn't really comment because I was clarifying the disabilities, but I'm concerned also with the amount of vacation time. And I don't know how we negotiate that tonight other than postpone it. But I am concerned with that. I'm concerned not just with the money, I'm concerned that the city manager needs to take vacation. That's what it's for, to give him some rest and relaxation. But I'm also concerned of it not being, it needs to be consistent with what we've done, and this sets an example. So I'm concerned with that. Timeline, to have a new council member come on the 15th, the meeting after they're sworn in, to discuss all this and have a good handle on it, I think that's asking a lot. But if we have to postpone tonight to get more discussion on the vacation time, then I'm willing to do that.
Further discussion on the motion.
I have a question,
Mr.
please.
Chalula.
I guess without making a negotiation session, I want to pose a question to Mr. Stevenson. If, depending what the answer is, that can, trigger going back to negotiations, or if there was a comfort level at this point. And my question, Mr. Stevenson, is, would you be willing to live with the vacation leave at 450 hours? And you don't have to answer it, but that will help make a decision.
I don't know that I'm prepared to make that, I'm not prepared to answer that tonight.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to comment on the motion. The motion is to postpone this decision till December 15th. A couple of comments on this. The first one is, I think Mr. Chambers is right. This is a tough, we're going to swear somebody in on December the 1st, and then the very next time they come in, this is one of the biggest votes they'll probably ever make. Originally, and I'll go with December 15th if that's what the majority wants, I'm okay with. But originally, I think I suggested that we do this in January, we get through the holidays, but then Mr. Stevenson, if you recall, was very opposed to that idea, said he needed a contract by the holidays so that he could know what was in, and that was back, if you remember, in order to build in some time, I originally proposed that we extend his current contract till April to give everybody some breathing time here, but water under the bridge. So the second thing I would advise the council, if the majority of you, and if the majority of you have heartburn over the vacation increase, it would help me if you would make some motion to say, no, we're not going to approve that, so that, because for me to go back upstairs and sit down again, and Mr. Stevenson and I, we've been through this for hours and hours and hours and hours, right? And for me to go back upstairs and us to sit down again, nothing's going to change. I mean, I would ask you to, yeah, Mr. Schisler.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. You guys worked hard at this, and and what you came back with is what we asked you to do. I see no purpose to delaying it to December 15th. If the council as a majority has a difficult time with the vacation hours, then I would suggest we go back to negotiate one more time and see if there was some kind of a happy medium between the 450 and the 650. And given that that can be done, then it gets brought back at the next meeting. I don't see the need to delay it till till December 15th. Again, as Mr. Chambers has stated, I don't think it's appropriate to lay that on the council, a new council person, that quickly. I could support that. I could support moving it to going back one more time and see if there's some kind of a happy medium, but I can't support it, delaying it any further than that.
Okay, so we haven't voted yet, but I want to make sure that I understand what is on the motion here. The motion is to postpone this till December the 15th. And I'm assuming that between now and December the 15th, you want Mr. Stevenson and I to huddle back up and talk about the 650 hours of vacation.
Do you want that in the motion? Because apparently you don't have the support for the 650. So you can either, I mean, I don't want to direct it, your numbers, with a motion, but you definitely need to sit down again, because if he's not willing to answer tonight, then that means that we are at a point where we have to.
Okay.
Sounds like you have one sticking point that everyone agrees on. Well, almost everyone. Can't speak for Mr. Schisler, he hasn't addressed that particular issue yet. But, so, I don't know whether I think it needs to be two motions or one. I mean, these are pretty heavy motions, both of them.
Well, I think it's clear
Yeah,
what your expectations are.
Yes.
I don't think you need to
Okay, then
amend
my
your motion
motion-
unless you want to. I think I understand what you want us to do.
and you're right. The reason I said December 15th was because Mr. Stevenson asked for enough time, more time than normal. And so, like I say, December 15th is probably only, 70 days, not 90, which is what, was asked. So, I mean, I'm willing to change the date if that's to make it later, but I was trying to listen to what he had asked for as well.
Well, I do want to clarify just one thing. The 650-hour figure, that is the middle number. That was the middle number because the other number was unlimited.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the original, that's where we started. I was at 450 and Mr. Stevenson was at no cap. So the 650 was the middle number. Now, we'll meet again. I don't mind meeting with Mr. Stevenson. I mean, it doesn't bother me to meet with him, but yes, Mr. Chambers.
Okay, even though I seconded your motion, I would vote against it if it's forced to the vote and support what Mr. Schisler said. Clearly, there's some concern on the vacation hours, and for me, that's the only difference. I support the 3-year renewal, I support everything else. Just want to take a look at that again. So if that can be done and brought back to us at the next meeting, that's perfect for me.
Well, there's another option too. The other option is to approve the contract tonight and just change it to 450. That's what you either agree to that or you don't. And that is an option, and then we can put this to rest right now. If that's the only sticking point, that is another option. We could withdraw this motion if you choose and make a motion to approve the contract as proposed with the exception of the 650 hours. We could cut to the chase right now.
We could, but we did ask Mr. Stevenson if he would agree to that, and he said he couldn't answer to that.
Well,
So.
that's
a-
true.
That's a do or
I mean,
die.
since a contract is a
That's a
two-way.
do or die contract then, in that case. It's take it or leave it. And that's tough. Andy?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chambers.
The problem I have with that, I mean, we could do that, but we weren't allowed to negotiate. You did it for us, and you did a great job, and I appreciate that, but now Mr. Stevenson has a feeling of what we're thinking, and give him an opportunity to think about it, and that's my feeling on it.
Well, I certainly don't mind meeting with Mr. Stevenson. I mean, we get along just fine. So, is there further discussion on the motion? Mr. Torrey.
Based on what I'm hearing, I think that there would be grounds to approve this contract, just so we sum it up, if the vacation leave was 450 hours. If it's anything beyond that, then it's going to be up for consideration to this council. At least that's what I thought I heard, because at that point, you're basically renewing, extending the contract that was in place, with the exception of the regular pay raise that all the other employees got. So it's not like we're given some special deal or whatever the case might be before the council, and it's only one person because there's still a majority that's controlling the council. So it's not like, I can make a difference one way or the other. So really the way I see it as I'm sitting here is that I didn't see any significant differences with this contract, with the exception of the vacation leave. So, really, I think the only discussion is going to be the vacation leave. Is it 450 or is it not 450? And if it comes back at the next council meeting and that's agreed to, great. If not, then it goes on to the future, or the next meeting or 2 or 3, wherever you guys take it. So that's I think what the sticking point is at this point.
Are you willing to make a motion to that effect?
We have a motion on the floor.
I know, but I want to know before I even entertain the thought of withdrawing the motion. Because the way I understand it is my motion says you are going to go back to talking and negotiating and then bring it back to us. And the only reason I said December 15th was so that to solve a couple of things that gave us heartburn, which one was that it would just be this council voting for the contract and not the new council. I hear what you're saying, Mr. Chiller, and I agree. I mean, that's the crux of the matter. We don't like the contract, we don't like what's in it, so why would we approve it unless we change it right now and we say this contract is changed to say this, and then vote on that contract? To me,
Well,
that doesn't give you any wiggle room.
Well, I think everybody's reading the majority of the council loud and clear about the vacation hours. I don't think you guys stuttered. I mean, I get what you said. And if you want to delay it until December 15th, we will go back and talk again, and I don't know what we'll bring back on December 15th. It might be the same thing, but, we'll try again. But then there is the issue of Mr. Sisler, about the date. In addition to the vacation hours, there was some discussion about the date. You didn't like the December 15th date?
I won't support it. I won't support the motion as it stands right now.
Okay.
Under any
Well,
circumstances.
in the interest of discussion, we can just vote up and down, but is there another date?
Next meeting. How long is it gonna take? It's a yes or a no on 650 or 450 or 500 or 5.25, whatever be the negotiation, okay? I mean, we're playing with our chief executive's life here, okay? And his future going forward, his livelihood. So I just don't understand why we need to, if the majority of council doesn't like the 650, we have no other mechanism to do this, unfortunately, with sunshine, okay? So now we're saying, okay, the majority of council doesn't like 650, well, then we can go back and negotiate with Mr. Stevenson and come up with another number, even if it's 450 or somewhere in between. I understand the precedent issue and so forth, but there's not a whole lot of different things that we could do in order to reward and say, you're doing the job we asked you to do, you're doing a good job. So I won't support it anything other than next meeting.
Mr. Chambers, is that your thought
That's
also?
my thought exactly, yes.
Next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, then the motion's still on the table, I'm just having some discussion here. What do you?
And again, if we can say tonight that we would support 450 being the number, which it sounds like that's a good possibility, then that would be, we would just change the contract tonight, and there wouldn't be any need to move it forward.
Yeah, but as you said, Mr. Stevenson's a party to the contract,
Well, he
too,
is.
so
He is, and he's basically said he wasn't in favor of that, so, or he couldn't speak to
No,
it.
he did
He didn't
not.
say yay or nay, he said
He
he
did
wasn't
not.
prepared to speak
Right,
to
he
it.
didn't.
So with that, not being prepared to speak to it, if we offer this now, and then you get in the office next week or whatever, and he says, no, I'm not going along with this, we're back to, we're back to square, we're back to the same conversation.
Well, that could happen,
I think it will happen.
could happen. Mr. Tlaib.
Mr. Mayor, just for the sake of moving things along, I heard what Mrs. Donahue said, what the others have said. I think based on what I'm sensing, I would ask that, if Ms. Donahue considers withdrawing her motion, the motion I would make would be that we task the mayor to going back to Mr. Stevenson to discuss the vacation leave, to see if there's, I think you said you understand where we're coming from, to see if there's any consideration on his part, and bring it back to us at the next council meeting, November 17 or whatever it is, and the next meeting in November for consideration of the contract. That would be my motion.
That's
if-
what I wanted to know, what your motion is.
Yes, ma'am, that's what it would be. Because I think that's the only sticking point, and the contract we're approving is pretty much a duplicate of what was there. And this contract that, for the most part, that Mr. Stevenson took was a contract that was in place from the previous city manager. So there wasn't much, tweaks to that. So at this point, I think the only issue is the vacation leave. And in order to move this thing along, give you the opportunity to meet with Mr. Stevenson and him, put his thoughts together and see if he's comfortable with it or not. And then obviously,
So there's two ways to get where we want to go, and the ball's in your court. You can amend your motion to bring it back to the next meeting, we'll take a vote which will pass, or we can vote on your existing motion, which is not going to pass.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Chilora, so what do you want to do?
I'm willing to amend the motion
Okay,
to have you renegotiate. However, you have heard us give you a number. And, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room in that number. So my motion is to go back to negotiating with Mr. Stevenson and bring it back to the next meeting.
we have a motion to postpone to the next meeting and bring it back. Is there a second? This was y'all's idea. There's no,
I wanted to add
second for a
something, if you
question.
could add something to the motion that we support all other areas of the contract. So it's clear that we're going back for is the vacation.
Well, I thought I said that by saying the one item.
To me, it wasn't clear enough.
Well,
well, all right, we can't pass the contract except for one clause.
Right.
We either pass the
Right.
contract or we don't.
Okay.
exactly. That's why, I'm not adding any more. I can't add any more. I cannot
Okay.
say that I
So
fully
the
support
motion is
this.
to postpone this
Yeah.
item to the next meeting.
Yes,
And for Mr. Stevenson and I to talk about the vacation leave and come back.
specifically.
Okay.
yes.
Is there a second to this motion? You were going to second it for a question?
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay. Mr. Schisler.
No,
Discussion?
I-
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? If not, all
Can I
those,
hear the motion restated one more time?
yes, if I understand, the motion is to postpone this item until our next regular meeting, which is December 17th, I think. Is that what I heard?
November.
November. November 17th. And that, in the meantime, Mr. Stevenson and I are to get together to talk about the vacation.
Is there a stipulation on what the quantity of hours must be?
Not in the motion, there
Not
is
in the
not.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
No, not in the
No
motion.
stipulations to what the hours are to be in the motion. That's
Correct.
fine. Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify with nay. Okay, we will discuss this on November 17th. Council business, is there other carryover business from previous council meetings?
I don't know if this belongs in council business or, it's not carryover, but I did bring this up before.
How about new business? Because
Yeah.
we're going there.
Yeah.
Is that fine? Okay.
I have in front of you a packet from the Florida League of Cities Municipal Administration Policy Statements. The three statements were voted on at the meeting in October, October 28th. They will whittle this down to two. So I wanted you to see what they were. If you have a choice, I know you're just getting these tonight. They voted on cybersecurity, supporting the legislature funding cybersecurity for cities. Obviously, short-term rentals is always in the forefront of any heartburn, using your word, for cities. And then a new one is smoke-free zones in public parks, giving cities the right to, which right now we do not have, the right to cordon off smoke-free zones. So I have to take this with me and vote. I'd like to know what your thoughts are, if you have any. If not, I did vote for the smoke-free zones and the short-term rentals. It was a tie with the cybersecurity. The concern there is that they're not sure that there's going to be any funding, any extra funding coming from the legislature. So, it might be a moot point. Anyway, I have to take, if you see anything that you would like to change in these positions, I need to let them know by November 3rd, which is tomorrow, yes. So, they are professionals. They have written these, and they will, of course, be worked on by the committee. So anyway, I'm bringing it to you as asked at the last time we discussed this. So if you have anything, or if you want me to vote on two specifically, just let me know how you feel. And that won't be until November 12th and 13th.
I was going to say I support 2 and 3. If you have to vote for 2 and 3.
So which two do you support?
Short-term rentals and smoke-free zones.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's my report.
I'm sorry, Mr. Schisler?
I agree with those.
You need to hear this here, because I'm not sure that this would be appropriate outside of a.
Correct.
So you have two for 2 and 3.
I agree.
You agree on those two?
Yes.
Very good.
Okay. All right.
Anything
Thank you.
else, Vice Mayor?
Nope, that's it.
Nothing else? I think, Mr. Sister, you had something?
Thank you. Just wanted to bring everybody up to date. Hart Board met today, and all is selected, I don't know if it's Adele or Adelie, Adelie, LeGrand, as the next CEO for Hart. They're entering into negotiations for her contract, and the contract will be brought back to the board in December for final approval for taking over as the CEO of Hart.
Good.
So finally, we're getting back on track.
Good.
And things
Where's she
are
from?
moving forward.
Where's she coming from?
Where's she coming from, Mr. Sister?
She's a mix between Atlanta and New Orleans right now. And assuming she comes on board, I spoke with her, and she'll be out to address us as soon as she figures out how to find Temple Terrace. So it's.
Great.
Yeah, so
You can take her on a
it's a
bus
good
ride.
choice. It's a good choice. Yeah, she was my first, I had two choices, and either one of her or a gentleman from Los Angeles. So we did well. I think we're going to get we got a good candidate. I think Hart should start moving forward better at this point, going forward anyway.
Very good.
Thank you. I'm done.
Other new business? I have a couple of things, just for FYI for you guys. I'm working with the clerk and her staff to create a spreadsheet so that in one document, we will all have each of our assigned boards, all the boards that we represent the city on, and as well as all of the city's volunteer boards and its members and their expiration of their terms in one spreadsheet.
Nice.
So that everybody will have access to see who exactly is on school supported and, you know, all of these different, and it's hard to keep track of who's on what, even up here. So I have the draft. I've been working with Cheryl and Kristen on that. And so as soon as we get that, which should be probably this week, we'll get that to everybody. And the only thing that will change is the date. So we'll have to make sure you're looking at the most recent date. But so that'll be available soon. Another thing that came up, God, I hate to go back to the contract, but this isn't contract. In my research in doing this, I discovered in the city rule, let me back up. Under the city rule, all employees can transfer a portion of their sick time over to vacation time. And there's metrics. You have to have a certain balance, and you can only transfer so much, and you have to maintain, there's metrics. And this rule applies to all city employees except the city manager. And there was an amendment to the rule made in 2016 it's one sentence amendment that says this does not apply to the city manager. Now, it's a moot point because it does apply to the city manager, going all the way back. All the old contracts all allowed the city manager to do this. The current contract allows that. So I don't know why that sentence was put in the rule. Mr. Stevenson he was acting city manager when it was changed. The HR people can't remember why it was changed. Nobody seems to know why this was changed. We searched the city council minutes. There was no discussion on the dais about this. We don't know who changed it. And so I'd like to tell Mr. Stevenson, take that sentence out of have HR take that sentence out, because we don't use it anyway. It doesn't, I mean, all the contracts always say the city manager plays by the same rule. So I'd like to take that out of just to clean up the city's HR rules. But obviously, Mr. Stevenson's like, well, I don't want to take it out because then it'll look like, it's self-serving to me.
Yeah.
So in the interest of transparency, does anybody have any heartburn with taking this out so that it doesn't look like Mr. Stevenson's doing something just to,
I
anybody?
don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so Mr. Stevenson, you can have Janet take that. I don't even know why it's in there, but it's not anymore.
2016?
Yeah, it's weird because it's just like a standalone sentence, and I don't know. I don't know what, and I look back at Mr. Sieber's contract, his his contract read the same as Mr. Stevenson's, so I don't know why it was put in there.
No, I found it in there, and was surprised to see it, and I let Mayor Ross know about that before he negotiated that 80 hours could not be converted by the city manager. I was hoping that there would be some minutes from a meeting where that was decided, but it wasn't, since it's in our policies, it wasn't decided in a meeting, so.
Right.
But is this a proper way to handle that, or are we creating an issue for 5 years from now?
No, and I mean, it sounds like a fine way to go, so that it doesn't look like the city manager just decided to change the policies all by himself.
Well, I mean, maybe form a resolution or something, I don't know, just deferring to.
No, this isn't a rule that city council would even normally get involved in.
Right.
It's just, we don't have to do anything. It's
Okay.
just- It's awkward because it's under his purview,
Yeah.
but it only affects him.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to bring it up here.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Any other new business, board reports? Mr. Stevenson, city manager's report.
I don't have anything to share with council this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. City attorney report.
We have started to look into the city's unpaid parking tickets. And from what I've been able to gather, when we had red light cameras, the red light camera hearing officer also was dealing with parking tickets. Once we got rid of the red light cameras and the hearing officer, there was nobody to handle the parking tickets, and apparently parking tickets just went unhandled. So there was a backlog of unpaid parking tickets, which our finance director would like to send to collections. However, there needs to be you can't just do that because nobody had ever adjudicated anybody guilty, so they weren't really due yet. So we are looking into establishing something that is less cumbersome, I guess, than not to say they're cumbersome, they're wonderful, the code enforcement board, but this would be just a one hearing officer, the way the red light cameras had been handled. That way, we're looking at going back 2 years of unpaid parking tickets. Those would be adjudicated by the person who would be the hearing officer. And once they're adjudicated, and the people would be given notice, of course, when we look back at how many we had, it seemed that it was really, we looked at the number of people. It was really a small number of violators because it was the same people over and over again. So we don't have that many people to really notify, which is fortunate. I wouldn't want to notify 100 people. But so it's really a small number of people. But we've got probably a couple of thousand at least in the last 2 years, dollars of unpaid parking tickets. That way the hearing officer could adjudicate these. Then our finance director could then send them to collections. So that would take care of those. And then going forward, if somebody contests their parking ticket, as they should be able to do, we would have a mechanism for them to do that. So this is probably going to require an ordinance that will be presented to you to establish this parking ticket hearing, that there be a parking ticket hearing officer, and then we'll work on the general procedures on how it'll function, and we'll present those to you at the time. So, unless, of course, you don't want us to do anything with the parking tickets,
Well,
and then please let me know, and we won't work on that. So,
And I'm thinking the whole time you're talking, and I didn't have time to think about this because I didn't know you were going to say this, but there's two very different images that come to mind when you talk about this. One is the person who repeatedly parks in a handicap zone or something like that, and I would say send them to collections, right? I mean, they deserve to pay their tickets. The other image that comes to mind is somebody who double parked or, whatever, and they got a parking ticket 3 years ago, and now they've lost their job because of the COVID, and please use discretion, and I don't know how you differentiate, but I got a bit of a, I wouldn't want the city to show up and say, okay, you owe us $200 in back parking tickets because you double parked at Publix 3 years ago. And we know you're out of a job and you're about to be evicted, but you still owe us, I
Well,
don't,
for it to be $200, they would have had to have double parked over and over and over again. Because the parking tickets, no one parking ticket is that high
Right.
unless it's a handicap parking violation. And we actually have at least 10 years of unpaid parking tickets. But as I said, we're only going to go back 2 years.
yeah, okay.
I didn't know you had to be adjudicated. I got one today.
Ooh,
Yeah, downtown, yeah.
you better talk to the chief as you leave here, Mr. Chambers.
Years ago, city staff, mainly at the rec center, we took classes and were authorized to write parking tickets, which I did a few times. At that time, when, if it was contested, it went to Hillsborough County. We were at the old Floorland Mall, the first Tuesday night of the month. Is that still going on?
Parking tickets used to go to county court, but the county court has given that task back to the municipalities. So the court is not hearing parking tickets anymore.
Anything else, Mr. Jones?
No, that's it.
Okay. Is there other business to come before the council tonight?
I just want to brag on the Parks and Recreation Department. The creativity that was shown at the movie night was just, it was so much fun, and they went to so much trouble to make sure that everybody was safely apart. And they had a story time from one of our wonderful librarians, and I mean, it was just such a nice family event. And the kids were, the movie started and some of the kids had no idea there was a movie going on. They were having too much fun running around, but you know what? The movie was loud enough that, it was a lot of fun. They had a nice sponsor from Pilot Bank and others, I'm sure, who I don't know their names, but it really showed, they went to an extra effort to make sure that it was fun. So if you see the next one, sign up early. It was a
Very
lot of
good.
fun.
Other business to come before the council tonight? If not, we are adjourned.